The galaxy burns. The heretic falls. And the Emperor protects. Welcome, Imperial citizens, to The Emperor Protects. My name is Doug with 2+ Stuff, along with my co-host Dan from Cubic Shenanigans. And we're here to read Horus Heresy books, so you don't have to.
There you go.
Welcome to our little book club, and we've just been hopping around the Heresy, getting to know different legions and stuff like that. And this week we are following up to our previous video regarding the Dark Angels. So the last one was Descent of Angels. This one's Fallen Angels. Is that correct?
Yes.
I got it right. Okay. I got it mixed up in my head.
Yeah.
And so this is book 2 of the Dark Angels saga as they kind of fall apart as a legion as the events of the Horus Heresy are kicking off.
Yes.
What are your overall thoughts before we jump too far into it? What'd you think of this one?
I really enjoyed this book. 99% of it until the end. I really enjoyed the way just 30K, the Heresy combat was, whether it was space combat or, Marines fighting something combat, or whether it was the conflict. The things that are going on in Caliban, he just did such a great job of building the tension and creating the feelings that we're going to talk about, that were the things that were going on. And so overall, I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah, I thought it was a great Space Marine adventure. I wish that it felt more like it had to do with the Dark Angels in a way. They didn't feel very unique to them, I feel like, but whatever. It's a great, well-written story, and I very much enjoyed it. So let's get into it here.
Okay.
So I want to frame one thing here for our listeners before I let you go off with your notes. This is different than the first book, because the first book was really Zahariel is the main character of that story, and he talks about having these close relations. This book pits two characters as the main, and you're looking at two different perspectives throughout the book.
Yes.
There's Zahariel again, and oh my gosh, I can never pronounce his name. Nemiel. Yes, I'm sorry.
No,
I always forget. I always say it wrong.
I can't imagine why there's only like 1,000 names in every one of these books. But
I know. It's two stories. They're in two different points of the universe, and they all have their own cast. So it's just name salad.
One of the things I thought was just it's a small thing, but it's stuff we talk about on here is, how the Ultramarines have courage and honor. That's kind of their battle cry.
Yes.
And these guys have courage and loyalty. That's what they call it, which makes it an even more interesting story when you get into it. Because that loyalty piece is what you're kind of scratching your head about here the whole time. So I thought that was kind of neat, because they always scream courage and loyalty when they're going into battle and stuff, and it's kind of neat.
Yep. And if you're looking for reasons to read the book, I think this one does a great job of playing with the theme of loyalty, but across both stories. Like, loyalty is tackled as a theme differently for both of them, but it's still core to who the Blood Angels, the Dark Angels are.
Yes.
Because it's wrapped up in the secrecy, the foundations of all their lies and why they lie to each other. It's all here, but it's all for the sake of loyalty. It's all to serve one another. I don't know. It's good. Good stuff.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you off the chain, my friend. Where are we starting?
Okay. So this takes place, as you said, on two fronts, really. So we have Lionel Johnson and his fleet have gone to a planet called Diamat. And we also have Luther and the Marines who were, the only word I want to use is exiled, because that's the way I feel for them, by Johnson after the incident at the end of Descent of Angels. And he sends Luther and a bunch of people back to Caliban, ostensibly to improve recruiting and improve supplies and logistics and this and that and this and that. And as you said earlier, so with Luther, we have Zahariel, who's now a full-blown librarian.
Yes.
And then we have Nemiel, who is his best friend, is now a full-blown chaplain.
And he's with too, or something like that?
Yeah. Yep. They friends for life kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting in the story how they weren't both librarians or both chaplains or both captains or something.
Yeah.
They each served different roles kind of to match their personalities or their skills in some way. So that was kind of neat. I like that. So again, the Dark Angels on Caliban are waiting to rejoin Johnson. They are just like chomping at the bit, and it's been 10 years, right? So you're like, oh my gosh, these guys have such patience.
So
they're waiting to get the word. Like, okay, I need you guys, come back to the fleet. Let's finish this up. Let's get it done. And the issue is, however, that there's actually a rebellion brewing on Caliban. And not only is there a rebellion, but there's some kind of an ancient evil that stirs within the depths of Caliban that we're going to learn more about. And again, as you said, we're seeing these stories through Zahariel and Nemiel's eyes. So
yes. And to add a little context, at the end of the last book, they went down into the belly of the planet, saw chaos infesting the heart of it, and then after that, Lionel Johnson seemed kind of disgusted, and he sent the people who were with him who knew about it back to Caliban. That's important for the rest of the story, is that he doesn't want people who know about this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's something about that knowledge that is a big deal. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. So I think what we're going to do is, instead of going back and forth often, we'll go back and forth a couple times. But we're going to start on Diamat, which is where Johnson and his fleet are. And at the time that we get, we start this part of the book, they are fighting against something called the Gordian League, who have rebelled against the Imperium. And the big reveal in this part of the book is that they finally get the word that Horus has gone traitor.
Yes.
And as with all loyalist Marines, when they get the word, there's doubt and there's disbelief and there's, hatred and anger and all those different emotions. And they are redirected towards a planet that is called Diamat, and it's a forge world.
Yes.
And so what happens is Johnson kind of summons Nemiel to the Invincible Reason, which is his flagship, and he outlines a plan to take a small strike force to Diamat. And it's actually pretty close to Istvan 3, which is where the heresy started, because there are loyalist imperial forces here holding out against the traitors. That's what they want to go save Diamat. It is a forge world, so it's really important. So Johnson's fleet arrives in system.
My understanding. Can I pause here? Yeah. My understanding is that he can't make his entire fleet go fast enough to intercept at Istvan 5. So he wants to hit the next domino that Horus would have to have. So this is like the next bottleneck after that. Yes. And so he's like, okay, well, Horus has to come to Diamat because it's got all the guns and the stuff he's going to need after everything that happens on Istvan. So he's trying to be forward thinking, but he just can't bring a ton of guys with him to do it.
Well, and the other thing is that he kind of knows something we're going to find out that we didn't know he knew. So he picked Diamat for other reasons, right? There's other things going on there that he knows it's really important that he gets there. And when he gets there, the Horus has a fleet there already besieging the planet. There are traitor guard who are fighting on the planet. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get to this place called Xanthus City, and the forge complex is adjacent to it. Of course, because we have forges, we have Mechanicum. And this is a whole nother piece to the puzzle. There's something going on with that, as always. So Johnson, using superior tactics, you would expect that. He breaks through the larger enemy fleet. And as we talked about before the show, this is probably one of the best ship-to-ship fleet actions that I have read in terms of the detail of what was going on and the tactics that they're using. Because at one point, Johnson launches like 60 or 70 Stormbirds, and you're going, what? Like, what do you think you're going to do? And then once you see what he does with it, and how that affects the battle. You're going, oh, that's just so cool, man. And the way it was described and the way the broadsides firing, the lances fire, it just a really, really cool narrative there.
Mm-hmm. And a great demonstration of his kind of brilliance, like
yes, his
showing
tactical
that,
brilliance.
Yeah.
Yep. And what he's going to do at the same time as he's fighting with the enemy fleet is he's going to do a drop pod assault on the planet. And Nemiel is in one of these drop pods because he's going to lead a contingent that's going down. Just as the drop pods are getting launched, boom, the ship gets struck by a torpedo or wreckage, whatever it is, and it knocks all the drop pods, because they were shooting like every 2 seconds, they're shooting out a drop pod. So it affected the trajectory of a lot of these drop pods. And once they're shot out, they don't have any real way to adjust.
No, they're bricks.
Right. They're just falling, right? And so Nemiel and his squad come down in completely wrong part of the city. They come down like they broke one through. You can imagine these drop pods and their weight. They just blew through a building into the basement, and they can't get the door of the drop pod open because it's jammed against the side of this
is embarrassing
basement wall, right? And it just the whole thing of the description of trying to get it open just enough so these Marines can squeeze out of it and deploy was pretty cool. And then so the Marines get deployed, Nemiel and his squad, and he's got a guy with a Melta, and he's got some other folks, and they get a message that they're being directed by command to rescue another drop pod, and it's got a designation of Echo 4. And you're going, okay, cool. I mean, that makes sense. You want to rescue some fellow Marines, right? But the way they keep talking about Echo 4, it's really important that they get there. Like there's something in the pod. You need to rescue this.
Right.
And the traitor guardsmen know there's something in there, and they have a demolition team that's going after this thing, and they have a Lehman Russ battle tank. It's going after this drop pod. Now, Doug, when you think about a Lehman Russ battle tank, you're like, well, these are Space Marines, and it doesn't matter because this battle cannon, as we all know, is just monstrous.
Oh yeah. No. Lehman Russ will put anybody in the ground.
Yeah, it doesn't care about your power armor, right? So they have to face off against this and rescue the occupant or occupants of this drop pod out. So it turns out and I love the way he builds it. He doesn't say what's inside Echo 4. He doesn't say why they have to rescue this thing. It turns out that it's a dreadnought named Titus, who plays a really important role in the story. But it was just so cool. Like, oh my gosh, like, how are you gonna? You can't squeeze him out. Like, get the doors open a little bit, and they have a tech marine with them, which is so cool because you don't really get that much in stories either. That was another cool factor of the story I liked.
Yeah, he does a lot in this book. He
does
shows you that tech marines are important and cool.
Yeah, right. Instead of just like, oh, there's one over there. Hi, and he's red armor, good. He literally puts 4 charges on these, and they're like sequence charges on this thing. So he blows the things that it's stuck in, and the door smashes open, and Titus comes out. Just as the Lehman the Lehman Russ tank fires at the drop pod and just incinerates. It just blows into 1,000 pieces. And you can just tell he's mad. Like, he's super angry. He's only got what do you call them? It's like a Gatling gun. He's got a Gatling gun on his one arm.
Oh yeah,
so
I can't think of the full name for it.
It's not going to assault cannon. He's got a big assault cannon, and that's fine, but it's not going to do anything to the tank. But he's got the claw, and right away the writer says, "Oh, but he has a claw."
Yep. Got a can opener.
The claw is going to take care of business, and he walks over to this Lehman Russ thing. He basically just jams. He just tears the thing apart. And the funny thing is that this tank shouldn't have been shooting at them because it had already been hit by one Melta blast. From one of the members from Nemiel's squad, because they could see the tank. and they could see Echo 4, and they had to get to it. And then they fired again, and then the Dreadnought just comes over and like, yeah, you're dead.
Takes the top off.
It was pretty cool. Yep. It really was cool. So the Titus and the squad, then they retake the Forge's southern gate from the rebels, and they're looking for Mechanicum forces because they know there are Mechanicum forces inside of the Forge that are supposedly allies. Okay, and so they find a squad of Skitarii, and this squad of Skitarii starts attacking them.
Yes.
And they get pretty badly shot up before this guy named Magos Arkoi. Remember this name, listeners.
Arkoi, yes.
He arrives and he orders his Praetorians, sends out the whatever he does, commands to them. And he's like, I'm so sorry. Their combat protocols hadn't been updated to count you as allies. It's all cool. And there was just something that didn't feel right about what happened and about him. Even at that early point in the book, you're just like,
it was a weird introduction. He gave everyone the creeps.
He's rationalizing what he did, and you're going, no, anyway, you knew something was coming. And,
it's suspicious when a Mechanicum player or a Mechanicum character explains themselves.
Yeah, because they never do that.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
What I do is logical. Don't ask me questions. So the Dark Angels arrive, send the rebels into retreats, and Diamond kind of gains a reprieve. There's pressure taken off so that we have an idea that things are going to turn around on this planet. Now, one of the things I thought was interesting was we know that Horus is somehow involved here. So we know without being told that sons of Horus are probably going to be involved here too. But we haven't seen them yet.
Right.
And I just thought that was interesting because the Dark Angels arrived to the planet, but we haven't seen these signs of Traitor Marines yet. Anything else about that first part of the Diamond story?
Nope. Lionel Johnson predicts I think a 3-week window from when the fleet that they pushed out will run back and then be able to come back with a counterattack. He's kind of getting everyone together and being like, tell me every single resource, every single gun that you have available. I want it on the list. And the Magos Arkoi he's a little dodgy about how many weapons he's got. He's like, I don't know. We had a lot of stuff blew up. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
He's being real weird.
This is important. This is very important.
But that's it for that section, yeah.
Yeah, for that section, sure. So we're going to switch back to Caliban, and we're going to kind of start the story there. So we have Librarian Zahariel.
Yep.
He's become second in command to Luther during these 10, 15 years that the garrison's been recruiting and training, and they've improved the forges to make weapons and ammunition, and Caliban has continued to change. It's an imperial planet now. So it's not the Caliban of old. There's not woods everywhere and stuff. And I think he did a great job, Doug, of in this part of the story, just kind of expressing the sadness and the, I don't know. I think they accepted the fact the Imperium was there, but they really didn't think that it was going to change their planet as much as it did.
Yeah. I mean, and it was also conceptual about what the Imperium life looks like. Yeah. There's a lot of disillusionment on Caliban. I think is probably a good way to put it.
That's a good word. That's a great word.
But what's interesting is that it starts off with this really great juxtaposition of they're doing everything right. Their recruitment numbers are higher, meaning the rate at which people take to being a Space Marine is really, really high. So there's less genetic rejects, training.
Yeah, I think
burnouts.
Noted that it went from 5 years down to 2 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, and they're cranking out Marines. I'm like, oh, okay, so where are all these dudes going, right? It's a ton of stuff. So they just keep fortifying and getting more Imperium-esque on Caliban, and no one's really loving it.
No, not at all. And I think, again, that the book does a really good job of creating doubt and resentment a sense of personal conflict for these Marines, especially the main characters, Luther, Zahariel even, but there are others that just kind of to get a dig in. They're like, yeah, there used to be woods over there where I used to hunt beasts, and now it's just a concrete slab, kind of thing.
Or the population is booming and now there's not power in some places, and it's like they're having growth trouble. Like it's
Yeah. And speaking of the people, there's resentment that they're basically taking all the people and doing what they usually do in the Imperium is they're just forcing them into factoriums and other places, and just it's not forced labor, but it's
forced-ish.
Yeah, forced. Okay, sure. And they can see what's happening.
Coerced.
These people that they spent their whole lives protecting and making sure that they were happy and content, even if it was a challenging death world, at least people lived fulfilling lives in their own way. And here it's just like they get shipped off and they're just part of the machine. And you see that.
The trick is to start a gang and get in on the ground floor for when Caliban becomes the new Necromunda.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, sure.
It's like being early on an MLM.
Right. So part of this is that a rebellion has started, and very low key at first, but it starts picking up, and it's being led by, we find out, former nobles who oppose the Imperium's takeover of the planet. And they really spent years, they've had 10 or 12, 15 years to plan this rebellion. And it's coming to fruition because they're damaging ammunition plants and power plants and arcologies. And they're relatively successful given the size of the rebellion. And the thing I thought was interesting was that it kind of seems like a slow burn. And it was almost as though Luther, to me, and I'm be interested in your opinion, it's like Luther wasn't even much aware of it. I think other people might have been more aware.
Well, I couldn't quite tell, because one thing I thought later on was like, oh, was he aware of it and was just trying to like ignore the problem, like downplay its significance to keep the conversation. Well, we'll talk about something else, kind of a deal.
Sure.
I couldn't quite tell if he didn't know or if he was just trying to hide it from Zahariel.
Okay. Yeah. And either way, it's bad.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not good.
No, not a good thing. So once Luther, quote, finds out, just, reference to our last conversation here, he attempts to put the rebellion down, but he doesn't want to deploy any Dark Angels, which was weird.
Yes.
That was just bizarre. We're going to use these guys called Jaegers, who are kind of, I don't know, maybe they're like, like Catechin, not Catechin. Who am I thinking of? The world that got destroyed. The really good guardsmen, the Cadians. They're kind of like Cadians. Okay. Yeah, and they're really well trained, but they're called Jaegers. So obviously they have some hunting skills, and they're a little higher level infantry.
Yeah.
And he uses them to try to put down this rebellion. But again, he's holding the Dark Angels in reserve, and he's got lots of Marines, as you said. And he and Zahariel end up meeting with the rebel leaders. And this includes a guy named Sardaviel, and he was a former Knight of the Order. And he's another, and it turns out these rebellion's leaders, they're all Calvinites. There's no Imperials here in that group. And Sardaviel actually, I think, fought against the Knights of Lupus, and he had some kind of an injury or something. And this is another one of those Johnson slights where Johnson was like, hey, you know what, old friend, you're not going to fight anymore. Just hang out in Alderrook and all that. So he's got some resentment against Johnson as well.
Yeah, so he was in that weird interim between Knights and Space Marines, and he got kind of lost in that shuffle.
Yeah, which was sad. So he's part of this group of rebels as well. And he warns Luther, as they're having this conversation, that Johnson's betrayed them and that there are monsters still on Caliban. It's not the beasts that they were hunting, but they're still monsters. And Zahariel's like, what? And Luther's kind of like, let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just wanted to go over, but Zahariel's interest is kind of peaked here because he had a lot of respect for Sardavio. So it's obvious that most of the rebel leaders, at least to Zahariel, are part of it because they lost prestige, most of them.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, we lost money, we lost prestige, we lost power, we lost land, and we want to get that stuff back. So, that stuff was lost when the Imperium came, and it's not for some more noble cause.
No.
Now this to me is something I know listeners will disagree with me with, especially when it comes to Luther. But when you think about imperial governors, and there are many stories of them who have gone rogue, almost every single one of them was because they wanted more power, or they wanted more wealth, or they wanted control, that kind of thing. It was all very, very selfish.
Yeah.
And Luther, as opposed to most of these rebel people who want to get their power and stuff back, Luther, he wants to make sure that Caliban is safe and that the people of Caliban are safe. And he stresses that there's no way or no time in the discussion or the book that you hear Luther saying, I want to be in charge. I want this. I want that. It's all about making Caliban better and safe and good. So there's this nobleness to his motivation.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of why the two stories tackle the themes of loyalty so differently, right? Like what Luther's loyalty to the people he sees every single day that he was outcast to from L. Johnson. It's his home. And like, he has a loyalty to them, and that comes up a lot. It's just this story that pits that against the Imperium that becomes interesting. Yeah.
And again, it really brings into question, is he really a traitor? That's as opposed to these other governors I talked about, where they would send somebody from the Assassinorum out to take them out, and the Imperium get control back. So one of the things then after this discussion is it's discovered that the entire workforce of a manufacturing plant, a power plant near the North Wilds ecology, remember North Wilds is up near where the Knights of Lupus were.
Yep, they were keeping the beasts.
Yep, they were keeping the beasts. The entire workforce and a response team that were sent to this site called Sigma 517 have just disappeared. They're gone. And there's a Magos, of course. There's got to be some Mechanicum guy. He's just, he's just infuriated that one of his facilities has been, something's happened there. So he leads Zahariel, or he kind of strongly, I'd say, encourages Zahariel to force Luther's hand by declaring that it's time to deploy some Astartes. It's like, you can't keep waiting. And of course, they think it's the rebels at this point.
And I will say, that costs Luther a lot of his capital, like authority, because the entire time there are other Dark Angels who are from Terra who are like, this is not how we do things. When someone acts up, we bring the full might of the military. Like, Dark Angels would have had their fists so far up that planet if it was any other legion.
That's true.
Can you fathom if that happened on like Dorn's planet? That place would be turned inside out.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And they're stressing him. He's like, guys, we got to go easy. It's the Primarch's home planet. Let's be gentle. And everyone's like, the Imperium is not gentle.
Yeah. The other thing to me is, Luther's held the Astartes in reserve in case of like a more nefarious undertaking than a rebellion was discovered, right?
Yep.
But maybe he's known something. This is the other part. This is that other dark side. It's the two-sided coin of Luther. Maybe he knew more than he's letting on. And maybe he knows this isn't just rebellion stuff. So Zahariel and Chapter Master Astalon, they take a team of Astartes to investigate this garrison and this site, and they descend underground further and further towards the plant's power core, and they find corruption everywhere. The earth is just like black, and there are these black webs everywhere, and it's just nasty. And it's overrun with insects, and they come under attack by these vicious reaver worms. And these reaver worms are like monstrous. They're like 3 meters long, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I thought was kind of comical was Astalan was like, these aren't the reaver worms I grew up with. It's like, these are a lot bigger than the ones I dealt with as a kid, because these things have been on the planet. It's not like were just created by chaos or something. They're native to Caliban. It was a really cool scene when they were fighting these reaver worms, because these things literally tried to lock on. They talked about how this was another really great descriptive scene where their mandibles would lock onto the Marines' helmets, and they had these stingers that they were trying to punch through their helmets. And you're thinking, of course, like aliens are going to take over the. Yeah. So it was just these massive worms locking onto these Marines. And so they get to the main chamber, and they fight these guys off. One of the things I thought was interesting, a little note, was Zahariel, when he's halfway there, he's like, maybe I should bring some flamers. Maybe I should have brought some flamers.
Yes.
You're going, well, at least later in the book, he's going to learn his lesson, but that was kind of funny. So he finds in the main chamber the corpses of all the plant's workforce, the response team everywhere. And they're like piloted by these parasitic worms. And there's this huge pile of them, and they're being used not only as kind of drone soldiers, they're being used as incubators for more of the not seeds, for more of the
like for the queen to propagate the species.
Yeah. Planting more and more of these worms, and they're protected, as you said, by this queen worm. It's huge, giant thing. And one of the things I thought was interesting, all of a sudden we get a verification that it is chaos, because we see all these chaos symbols, right? All over the place in this giant master chamber that the queen is in. And I kind of wondered, though, it mentions that, maybe this is because we saw, Zahariel and the guys saw these chaos symbols. Is it part of some unholy ritual? Well, I don't know. Is it? They
didn't lay it out too clearly, in my opinion. My sense was that. Can you turn your microphone down? I can hear myself.
Okay, hang on.
My sense that I got from the discussion.
Is that any better?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Was they perceived that something was happening in the planet to make these creatures different than what they were supposed to be. Like, they're way bigger, or they're way more aggressive. So I don't know if it was like chaos affecting Caliban the way that it has historically, with like monsters becoming the beasts or something like that. I don't quite know. But whatever chaos is doing, they're using the monsters as kind of a starting point to destabilize the planet.
Sure, absolutely. And again, it was just hideous that you had these parasitic creatures controlling human beings. Just anywhere you see that in a movie or anything else, it's horrific. When that happens. So the corpses, some of them reanimate, they attack the team, and they're getting overrun until Zahariel kills the queen. Barely. He gets pretty beat up in this combat. This wasn't easy. And of course, he's got this psychic piece going on the whole time, but whatever's in the chamber is really hurting him. It's like causing pain to him. So he knows there's something not right with the warp inside of this chamber. So the squad end up retreating after they kill the worm. They ordered the plant destroyed. They're going to, destroy it from orbit. And again, the description of he and the queen fighting and the Marines fighting them was just really, really cool. An excellent excellent battle scene for Marines. So we have one mystery solved only on Caliban.
Yep. What's going on with the plant?
Yep. And shall we head back to Diamat?
I would love to. I love this story.
Okay. So we're back in Diamat, and Johnson plans a defense of the city, the major city in the Forge, with Magos Arkoi. Oh, yes, there's our buddy. And the Imperial Governor, his name is Kulik. And like you said, and you mentioned this before, he requests a list of all the available stuff. Well, the Lion tells Nemiel he's discovered and wasn't told by his bestest buddy, Magos Arkoi, that there are 6 super heavy-duty siege machines, otherwise known as Titans, that had been requisitioned by Horus and kept on the planet. And again, our buddy Arkoi didn't tell the Lion, didn't include that in the inventory.
No. Johnson found the receipts.
Yeah, he found the receipts. Yeah, exactly. So really, the primary mission now isn't to save the Forge; it's to keep these war machines from being delivered to Horus.
Yes.
Yeah, and also by doing so, he's going to prove the perfidy of Arkoi, because I think that he and Nemiel have a feeling about this guy, but they can't prove anything. So you can't just make an accusation against a Magos and expect that to hold.
Mechanicum are so inhuman in how they communicate. You're like, this could reasonably be a miscommunication or something like that, but everyone feels real weird about it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So Nemiel and his squad infiltrate into the Forge complex. They kind of go in the cover of night, and they're looking for machines and trying to discover evidence, because Johnson has sent him on a detective mission, as it were, again, to try to get the, as you say, the receipts on Arkoi. And it looks like Arkoi, he was not like the main Mechanicus guy. He had a boss. And it looks like Arkoi's superior and the Skitarian stuff that were loyal to him were murdered.
Yes.
From what they could see, the way the battle's laid out, there's something that goes on. And Arkoi said, no, they all got killed in battle. They were fighting the traitors and this and that. And, the red light goes off, and Nemiel's like, okay, this guy is a scumbag. And they find the siege machines, and they find Arkoi, and they find some traitor army leaders. They're all overseeing work on the machines, of course. And they're butchered bodies of all these loyalist Mechanicum all over the place.
Yes.
And it's just like one squad, and there's a lot of people.
There's just paste. Yep.
Yeah, but it's obvious what's going on now. Very, very obvious. And so, realizing that Arkoi is a traitor, he was ready to hand over the siege machines. They just needed to put down some, huge transport haulers to get them off the planet. And
actually, I want to interject here. Give your voice a break. Yeah. So they kind of put together some forensic clues, and it seems like Johnson arrived when the traitor forces were coming to pick up the siege equipment, and they didn't have time to load them, and so Arkoi's like, okay, you guys leave. I will keep the farce going, and you guys come back with strength, and I'll have everything ready for you.
Yes.
In that craziness, he killed his boss, and then he was supposed to, like, the AdMech dudes were like firing on the Space Marines initially. They were supposed to, and then once they realized there's no way we can hide these things or get them discreetly off the planet, that's when everyone started being chummy.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's when the farce went up, and it's been interesting. It was really cool how they put that together of like, there was like a time and a sequence to these events that we just walked right in the middle of middle of his Civil War. Arkoi's.
Yeah. And so realizing that Arkoi is a traitor, and like you said, they were ready before they even got there to hand this stuff over. Nemiel and his squad are discovered, and they try to escape to, inform the rest of the Dark Angels. But it looks like they're too late to prevent Orkoi's ultimate treachery. I think it's the ultimate treachery, where, remember earlier he said, "Oh, I made a mistake. I didn't change the protocols." The protocols were changed before. They were supposed to kill Marines. They were supposed to kill Loyalists. So he basically activates this code that's in all of his Skitarii, and all these Skitarii units that were embedded with the Imperial Army and the Dark Angels turn on the Loyalists, and there's just this mass amount of damage.
Full blown Order 66 Star Wars style.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. That's what it was. And at the same time that happens, that the Skitarii just go nuts and start killing all the Loyalists, Horus's, to your point, second fleet arrives, and it goes past the Dark Angels fleet because Arkoi and his Mechanicum basically sabotaged the ships, because they were sent up after the first battle to repair all the ships. And they're like, "Oh, this is a great opportunity to screw with these guys."
Yep.
And so Horus got through, and his forces got through, and they were able to send a force of Sons of Horus Traitor Marines into the city now. So the Lion wants the main forge complex destroyed from orbit if he can.
Yep.
And he does, and he kills Orkoi. A little late, by the way. All the damage is done. I don't care if he's dead now.
Right. Yes. He's already done his part.
Yeah, and he teleports. The Lion actually teleports to the surface to defend the Titan Foundry and the 6 machines. And Kulik, who was the governor, and his surviving forces arrive to help. But of course, who do they face when they arrive? The Sons of Horus. So they just get smacked.
Yep. Yeah, they're not ready for the violence of a Space Marine charge.
No. You just have no idea what's going on, right? So we have the outnumbered Dark Angels. They're ready to make a last stand because they are outnumbered at this point. What's on the planet? Tech Marine Ascalon. Yeah, Tech Marines. He does the coolest thing, I think, in the book. This is just amazing. So the Dreadnought Titus, you're wondering why he was important to the story. The Tech Marine literally kind of teleports his consciousness into one of the interface units in one of the Titans.
Yeah, he rigs him up like a redneck with a car battery powering like a grill or something like that. Something absurd. He plugs a dreadnought into this new siege equipment that was supposed to have AI. It was so cool.
He goes, "That was so cool." And he just toasts the Sons of Horus guys. They're just gone, man.
They're like, "Titus, can you use your gun?" And Titus is like, "I am a gun." And just ignites half the battlefield. It's pretty rad.
Oh my gosh, it was so cool. That was one of the few highlights of the book. I mean, there are several, but that was one of the best scenes. And the thing was funny, like, I wasn't expecting that.
No, I didn't see that. I was like, oh yeah, of course. I thought the heresy was that they were using AI in general. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of a cool reveal. But then they're like, no, we're gonna plug someone in. I'm like,
oh my gosh, that was just so neat. So Sons of Horus get pushed back. And, after they do their attack, it doesn't leave them any time. So they did attack once. They attacked twice to try to get to these things. The Sons of Horus did, but they tried a third time. But a loyalist retribution fleet arrives, and it's commanded by our man Perturabo.
Yes,
which interesting. Right? Interesting. That was...
well, that means he's on his way to go do Istvan 5, right?
Well, we don't know that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, everybody. We don't know that.
Absolutely right. And this, like I put in my notes, is sadness, because you're thinking, all right, Perturabo's arrived. He and Johnson are buds. They're good. They're two brothers who get along, and they respect each other. And so Johnson's like, hey, you know what? if you're going to go fight the traitors, you're the siege guy. Why don't you take these 6 things with you? And you just kind of grab your head and go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Did he really just do that? But now we have the meta knowledge that Johnson didn't have, of course.
Right.
But it was just like, and Perturabo inside is just like, he's chuckling.
Nothing bad.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it was just horrible, man. Because he's going to end up using these things at the drop site massacre on Isfon 5.
Yep.
And I can imagine that he used them on Terra when they finally got to Terra. I can't imagine not.
Just handed him some of the best weapons ever.
Oh my gosh. So that's kind of how the Diamat part of the story ends. And you're going, whoa, man. All that for nothing.
Pretty much, yeah. It ended up, I mean, like, well, pretty much nothing in the sense that, like, it ended up in Chaos's hands anyway, but
right.
How it got there was pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. And the story itself was a good part of the story. You're right. It really was. So now we're back on the quaint forest world, former forest world.
I was going to say the not so forest world.
And Luther receives a report and deduces that the Terran engineers who are overseeing the one power plant must be responsible for that ritual. It had to be the Terran engineers, the guys from Earth, of course, from Terra. And here's where I think this dread fear comes upon Luther, and it's something that just sticks with him for the rest of his time. Is he's just so afraid that if the Imperium finds out that Caliban is tainted like that they're gonna do exterminatus on it or something.
Yep. Yeah, if there's a root corruption in the planet, they'll just wipe this whole thing out.
Yeah, they're not gonna bother, right? And so he orders everything kept secret. Don't talk about what you saw and what was going on in the power plant. So the rebellion, which was focused in the North Wilds arcology area, caused a lot of citizens in the arcology there to be stuck in the lower levels. They had no power, they had no water, and of course they ended up being really close to more of the Reaver worms and more of the queens and other things. So Zahariel has this drive to find out more about this taint now that he's experienced it from his first encounter at the other plant. So he kind of reaches out to the Watchers because he has a very special relationship with them. It started when he was fighting his first, the Line of Caliban, when he was fighting that creature. And so he's talking to them, and they tell him that the Imperium, and this is a little vindication for the Dark Angels, the Imperium is responsible for unleashing this taint because it dug too far down. Yep. Right? And this is kind of like the dwarfs in Barad-dûm who dug too far and then released the Balrog, right? This is what I'm thinking of. So the tainted area that he wandered into here as an aspirant knight, I guess it's kind of like he's got this block in his brain. Like he doesn't remember any of this, right? He knows that something happened, but he can't lock in what it was, or he can't get this revelation that he needs to get to understand the whole situation. And of course, he vows to defeat this taint and whatever. And then the Watchers just kind of look at him and go, "Caliban's doomed. Just don't bother, man, because your planet's lost." And obviously, they're seeing a lot further ahead than any of us as readers are. So Zahariel does remember, though, that Sardaviel said to Luther that Cypher organized another meeting with the rebel leaders, and they travel to the North Wilds, of course, and the situation's deteriorating very badly, right? And Zahariel is kind of shocked to discover his old training master Remiel is also one of the rebel leaders, and like these are two people, Daviel and Remiel are people that he truly respects. And there's no question about their intentions at all.
Half of book one is just praising these dudes.
Yeah. So the two of them, Daviel and Remiel, finding out about the taint now, reveal that they already knew it. They already knew about it. And you're going, what? They already knew about it. And it all goes back to, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, it all goes back to the sons of the Lupus Knights.
Yes.
It all goes back to them. They knew something. They had this library full of some kind of, arcane knowledge, and they knew there was something wrong. And
because
so
instead
now,
of killing the beast, they wanted to study them, and they're like, this is part of Caliban, and everyone else is like, no, let's kill him.
Yeah. All right. But when he finds out that Daviel and Remiel already knew about the taint,
yep.
They agreed to join forces with Luther in order to stop this thing. Because there's Terran sorcerers that they found out who are using this situation to fuel another, it's more of a master ritual this time. Now it's going to really unleash the taint all over Caliban. And on the journey back to Alderuk, Sardaviel, here it is, he reveals that the Knights of Lupus were aware of the taint, and they study it. And to your point, they tried to harness the power, which is why Johnson wanted them destroyed. Mm-hmm. And he took possession of the library, Johnson is such a jerk. Like, okay, you want them destroyed, but you want to keep their knowledge around. Like, it's one or the other. You can't have it both ways. And so when he didn't want the library destroyed, what does that say about what Johnson wanted?
Yep.
And it really, I think, brings out that darker side of him that people don't want to admit to.
It's like a sins of the father type thing, right? Like he tried to keep that knowledge away, just like the Emperor tried to keep knowledge of the warp. And it's like, this never works out.
No. You can't lie to people forever. They're going to find out eventually. It also, this was kind of cool part of the story. I thought one of the cool parts. Sardaviel also says that the last Knight of Lupus went into hiding, but he managed to get rid of his identity, and he joined the Order, and he became the new Lord Cypher. Going, what? Oh my gosh. Because Lord Cypher has a huge amount of influence over, the Lion and over Luther. And so the implication here is that this Lord Cypher and Lionel Johnson were complicit. Right?
Yes, they worked together to maintain downplay it, keep it covert.
Yep. Yeah. And it's almost like Johnson was leaving Caliban to its fate.
Yes.
And you're going, oh my gosh, oh man.
And honestly, I had to stop for a second. I was like, I had to let that sink in, of these characters who thought they're putting it together the Lion wanted nothing to do with us after we experienced this chaos thing. So he knows about it. He knows what it was. And rather than just telling us, he doomed us to being out here and just like waiting until the Imperium finds out and annihilates everybody.
Yeah.
Like, what a wuss.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that he stranded all these guys who knew about it, to your point much earlier, on Caliban, just waiting for them almost to die.
You'll get washed away with the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just horrible. And which is weird too, because the new and improved Lionel Johnson, who's come back in 40K, right? He's very different than this dark Lionel Johnson we see in the Heresy. Very different person. Anyway, we got Cypher and Johnson complicit, leaving everybody to die. And so the group gets back to Alderuk, and Cypher tries to keep Zahariel from seeing Luther and telling him what he's seen and what he thinks is going on. But Zahariel, of course, gets by him, and he finds Luther in a library with books, having spent weeks and weeks and weeks going through these Knights of Lupa's books.
Yes.
So he's convinced, which is funny when it's put that way, that that Johnson sent him back to Caliban, exactly what you said, to die when the Imperium discovered. And Israfel is there as well, which all of a sudden he kind of appears in the story, because that I recall, we really didn't hear much about him until this part of the story.
No, he protested a bit, and then Luther was like, just shut up until I can fix this. Like, he was one of the voices who was like, no, the Imperium's not nice. We bring the fist. Like,
yeah. And so anyway, Sir Daviel reveals that a knight who packed up the library when it was moved was a guy named Ulliant, and he's the one who tried to assassinate the emperor in the first book. And when this is said, when these words come out, all of a sudden that mental block we talked about earlier that was on Zahariel, it just pops. And because Israfel had actually placed this memory block on him.
Yes. He's
really,
like, you've been playing with my brain, and then his buddy's like, everybody's brain gets played with. This is the Imperium, bro.
Yeah, and it's the whole thing. This is the Imperium, what you just said. And Israfel didn't apologize or nothing. Nope, it's just like, no, this is it. So he tries to overpower Luther so that Zahariel could get placed in command of the Legion. But Luther, of course, he's prepared. He's got like all these ruins and wards etched into his skin, I think the book says. And Israfel tries to attack him, and it just kind of bleeds off. It doesn't do anything. Yep. And sadly, Israfel kills Sardaviel, which I wished it. Well, he does die. And then Israfel is overpowered. And he's badly wounded by Cypher. He's imprisoned. I wished he would have died, but no, he didn't die. So Luther declares Caliban is no longer, this is where he's just done with the Imperium after he finds out this stuff with Israfel.
Yep.
He's just like finished. This is now a non-Imperial planet. Caliban will be what it always was. We're going to take it back. We're going to make it what we want to make it. And he just has this huge epiphany when this died. So he orders Astalan, who's the chapmaster, to arrest the Imperial administrators that are on the planet, which is the first step. And then he takes a force to the North Wilds Arcology to stop the Terran sorcerers.
Yep. So at this point, he still thinks he's doing good. He's like, I am taking control. The Imperium was never going to help us. No. Again, to your point earlier, he's trying to do all this to help.
Yes. His intentions and his motivations are noble, which is good. Anyway, okay, so they come to the Arcology, and he kind of coordinates with the local armed forces there, which are the Jaegers pretty much, to prevent the spread of those corpses, that are controlled by the worms. They're coming up, they're grabbing more citizens and taking them down. And he wants to get control of all that. And he also orders the Jaegers to evacuate everybody that's clean. And one of the Jaegers was like, well, my lord, it's going to take a little bit of time because we got to make sure none of these people are infected.
Yep.
So
he's just like, do it yesterday.
It's like backing up at the TSA at the airport, right? I mean, you got to go through the scanner, man. If you don't go through, you can't get off of the tarmac there. So they basically fight through an army of these undead things. And this time, as we said before, they have flamers, they have meltas.
Yep.
No problem. They're going to get this done.
Kill Team expansion.
Yeah, right, exactly. And the Dark Angels, they find these Terran sorcerers carrying out a ritual. And there's this monstrous Reaver worm. It's much bigger than the queens. Like there's 6 queens around this thing.
Yes, there's like a
And
behemoth style.
so it was, you thought the one that Zahariel killed was big. This is just gigantic, ginormous. And Luther has decided what he is going to do is he wants to, because he read the books, of course, he knows, he wants to harbor or harness the power of the taint, just like the Knights of Lupus tried to do, rather than banish it, right? So he can use it as a weapon against the Emperor, because, you know, it's kind of like a heretical inquisitor. You know, once you use chaos against chaos, you're on the bad boy list.
Yep.
And
yeah,
so
it's a slippery slope.
Oh man, and he's slide really fast. So here's the part that was just like, oh come on, Luther. So he uses Zahariel as the conduit to get this done. He's like, hey kid, come over here, stand on this spot. I'm like, oh my God, man, you're just gonna throw him away. And he attempted. Zahariel's a very powerful librarian, so he attempts to control the thing, but it doesn't work, and the ritual does collapse, and the sorcerers are killed. But the main thing that Luther was trying to scream at Zahariel to find out is what is the true name of this thing.
Yes.
Which means if you have, knew it was a demon, right? He knew it. He didn't say that, but he didn't use the word. But he wanted to know the true name. And Zahariel is, I just can't get it. It's screaming something at me. It's screaming a name, but it's not its true name. And so Luther's kind of like, well, you know, ritual collapsed. I'm sorry, we tried. Better luck next time. And Zahariel falls over dead. He's going,
oh
man, but he's not.
No, he's not dead. He's just dead tired. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just like, oh my gosh. Zahariel's like the only clean person in this whole story.
Yep. They cooked his brain pretty good too.
Yeah, and that was really terrible. So 8 months he is in recovery. And of course, he's, been revived by Luther, and he spent most of his time in a coma. So he has another epiphany, and his connection to the warp, they call it the taint, it's the warp. His connection to the warp allowed him to realize that these Terrans were not trying to summon the creature and get it to become its full potential. They were trying to get rid of it. They were trying to destroy it and finally eliminate the corruption at the heart of Caliban. So it's not gone. It's still infesting the planet's core.
Yep.
And the other thing,
manipulated into stopping all that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And he also conceals from Luther, and this is like the last thing, I think it's like the last line in the book, is that he actually, and this is, they don't say he knows Luther or he knows the creature or whatever. He says he knows the name of the taint at the core of Caliban. That's all it says. Doesn't say who it is, but he knows the name. And that was just so weird, because what was that implying? Was that implying it was Johnson? Was that implying it was Luther? Was it this chaos essence that's there? What was it? Because of the way the story ended, right? I mean, do you agree with that, or do you see that a different way?
I do agree with it. I think that my personal take is that it was meant to be like an artistic liberty of like, what do you think? What do you think was the heart of Caliban's problems?
Sure.
For me, it's just lies. But like, if you're being a bit more literal, of course, it could always be the name of the demon. But even then, the book didn't wrap up the planet blowing up, which is the only thing I know about Caliban is that it blows up. So I'm like,
yeah.
When?
Yeah. See, now we had talked about this at some point earlier, and I think it's worth mentioning is that Caliban isn't actually destroyed until after the Heresy's over.
See, I did not know that for the longest time.
And I didn't either. I had to look it up because you had talked to me about it, and I'm like, wow, I'm so curious now. When did it happen? I thought it was like maybe a short story or some kind of a novella or something inside the Heresy, but it happened afterwards,
Okay.
when Johnson came back to see what happened to his planet. And by that time, Luther had completely taken control of the planet. There's several little
Right, it fell
short
apart.
stories and stuff where there was some, Johnson had sent back, I think, an advanced party of Marines to talk with Luther and stuff. And they had this big feast for him or whatever, and then shot them all.
Nice.
It's like, oh my gosh. And I know there's a big, like, fuss up between Nemiel and Zahariel and that kind of stuff. And
that's in short stories?
I think so, yeah. But there's several of them. There's a Dark Angels book. There's several short stories that talk about these different things that happen. If you look them up, you can. It has references to which ones they were. But yeah. So overall, I enjoyed the book. I really did.
Yeah, I'd say overall, I definitely enjoyed the heck out of it. Like, I think it was very competently written. It's very fun to read. If you like Dark Angels, you will not be disappointed. It just didn't cover what I thought it was going to. And I just feel like at this point we're far enough into the heresy to like speak pretty clearly about like the nature of chaos and how things are happening. I don't know. It was just kind of interesting. I look at factions like we'll say the World Eaters, right? Who got one seminal book. These guys are on book 2, and a lot of their stuff hasn't really been developed very well. And I'm like,
yes, yeah,
but they're good stories. Like I like them independently. I just,
yeah,
they don't have any context for the greater setting or anything like that.
Yeah, well, and see, that's a really, really good point, because most of the other books we've covered and other heresy books, they add something to moving the story forward of the heresy.
Yeah.
If you could just take these, well, the Diamat piece, maybe not, but even that's a small thing. But these two stories are really about the Dark Angels and about Caliban. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about this bigger effect that all this stuff had on Horus' success or his movement towards terror or any of those other kind of things. So self-contained, yes, but in terms of the larger picture, it would be, I would compare it kind of to like, when we did Thousand Sons and Prospero Burns, those were two different perspectives on a story, but that story definitely moved the heresy forward. It definitely contributed to other things that happened. So
well said.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I thought it was good. My favorite character for sure was Zahariel. I felt like he had the best insights and sometimes like with characters, it's really annoying where it's like, this character shouldn't know this kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like they haven't been taught that information yet. I feel like the way in which he found things out and responded to them one by one as things went on and just kind of went downhill. I was like, I like this.
Yes.
Everything made sense as it was happening, even if you end up in a weird place where I'm not sure how you got there.
Yeah. I would agree with Zahariel being my favorite character. And one of the really cool things, we're not going to do any spoilers here, other than to say he's not done. He's not done in the heresy. In fact, he plays a very, very pivotal role during the siege. He
becomes the emperor, right? That's the ending.
Yeah, he becomes the emperor. Yeah. No, but it was a really cool like reveal in there too. You just totally forgot about him, right?
Yeah.
There's so many books between this one and the end and the death, and all of a sudden he shows up and you're going, whoa, that's so cool. Like they couldn't have done a better job of bringing him back into the story somehow.
That's awesome.
Right? That's awesome. Yeah, it was very cool.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and announce our next book here. We already talked before this and decided we're going to do Slaves to Darkness, book 51, written, let's see, this is by John French.
Yep.
And you've told me it's kind of a background story of the various Chaos Primarchs.
Yeah,
Good.
it's one of the few books, Doug, where we get the chaos perspective and almost totally the chaos perspective.
I'm here
And
for
that's
it.
what's really interesting. And the main characters for the story are pretty much all of the Trader Primarchs. So it's cool.
I love it. So yeah, we will be doing that. I hope you will join us for that. No firm date on when it's going to be released, but we'll be talking about Slave Star. It's a shorter book. It's only like 11 hours or something like that.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
But anyway, do you have any like final thoughts for us in this episode here?
No, just glad we could get the Dark Angels done, especially with Johnson coming back in 40K. I think it's certainly something people would be interested in.
Yeah.
If they don't have that background.
But now we got to talk about stuff that matters, like chaos factions. So. Gotta...
Yeah. Right. Sure.
Well, anyway, thank you so much, Dan, for hanging out with me today, and thank you, listeners, for joining us as we talk about it. It really was a good book. I very much enjoyed listening to it, even if the ending wasn't what I was hoping for. I felt like the ride to get there was rewarding and quite a bit of fun. So, thank you so much for listening and watching. Go follow us on our various other medias if you would like to. Any last thoughts, Dan, before we hang up for the day?
No, just
okay.
It was great being on board with you. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you all so much, and I'll catch you next time. And may the Emperor protect.